So, now in this concept we are going to discuss how a plant will prevent self-fertilization functionally. So in previous concept we saw structural prevention, and this we are going to see functional prevention. We don't see any difference in the flower. The flowers look same, but still they employ incompatibility. No morphological distinction. We don't see any structural difference. Different mating types found in this species. So we are going to learn two types of self-incompatibility. One is gametophytic self-incompatibility. You can see the abbreviation of that. Another is sporophytic self-incompatibility. You can also see abbreviation of that. So now we are going to see how a plant will employ incompatibility through gametophyte and sporophyte. So gametophytic self-incompatibility. I wrote the abbreviated form. In this case, what happens is when the gametophyte approaches stigma. So what is gametophyte? I already told you in my concept video. The gametophyte of the male reproductive part is pollen grain. So how many male gametes does a pollen grain carry? 2 haploid male gametes. In this case, as the name suggests, gametophytic self-incompatibility. Here, the genetic composition of gametophyte plays a role. And stigma. What is stigma? Stigma is the receptive center for pollen grain. So here this stigma does not play a role in preventing the self-fertilization. The pollen grain which brings the male gametes to the stigma prevents the self-fertilization. For this we need to know little of its genetic composition. To employ self-incompatibility, the plant uses a gene called S. How you write I in immunoglutagen in case of blood groups? The self-incompatibility is ruled by gene S gene. Like blood groups, S gene has multiple alleles. So it is not only 2 alleles, multiple alleles. So like 2 or 3, it's not, close to 200 multiple alleles are seen employed by this gene. Now let us take an example of 4 alleles, S1, S2, S3, S4. So if these are the multiple alleles taken for example, then the possible alleles of gene expression in a diploid plant can be S1, S2, this is one possibility, S1, S3, this is one possibility, S1, S4, this is one possibility, and S2, S3, this is one possibility, S2, S4, this is one possibility, S2, S1, this is one possibility. So we have S3, S1, one possibility, S3, S2, one possibility, S3, S4, one possibility. So these are possible alleles. But if you see here S1, S2 I wrote, and I wrote S2, S1 here. This is possible in dominance. So this is, if S1 is dominant over S2, heterozygous dominant, then S2, if I write first, is dominant on S1. So if I consider dominance where one allele expresses over the other, then these two combinations are possible. This is my point. But gametophytic self-incompatibility operates on the basis of codominance. So if there are two alleles, we have two expressions possible. One is dominance, as I told here, where one of the alleles will express over the other. So both of them can have a chance in getting expressed depending upon the composition. Codominance means if I write S1, S2 as two alleles, then both of them will express in the formation of gametophyte. So for instance, if this is the stigma, so what did I draw? I drew stigma. So the pollen grain will come and drop on the stigma. So there is a dialogue between the stigma and the pollen grain. We call it as pollen pistil interaction. Whether to permit the pollen grain to germinate or not. So here, if I take the alleles of stigma is S1, S2, like this is the expression, and both the alleles are expressing, then this is codominance. And the pollen grain also has S1, S2. So here it is the same codominance, so this pollen grain will not germinate. Then if we have another pollen grain which has S1, S3. So it is a codominance. Because of the presence of S1, S3, this pollen grain will partially germinate, but this will not be successful. We should not have no allele in common is the point. And then if it is S3, S4, if a pollen grain has S3, S4, then this is also codominance, both the alleles are speaking. This is also codominance, both the alleles are speaking. Then this one absolutely is not related genetically. So this will successfully grow into a pollen tube till the ovule for fertilization. So here the allele composition of what is deciding the self-incompatibility? Gametophyte. What is gametophyte? Pollen grain. How many alleles in a diploid plant will speak? 2 alleles. What is the method of expression? Codominance. So when it is speaking any one of the codominant, also it would not germinate. Because it is codominance, it should be absolutely different alleles. Then the compatibility will set in. This is gametophytic self-incompatibility. In my next concept video, I am going to do the sporophytic self-incompatibility. Please watch.